Welcome to the Sens Spotlight podcast brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, bet the beauties with Betway and scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Also, for our YouTube listeners, please hit the hype button. That really helps out the show, and like and subscribe. It really, again, helps us out and helps grow this show. It should be a fun episode, although we will be dissecting the Sens loss last night to the Florida Panthers with the one and only Pierre McGuire. So it should be a fun and interesting chat. I'm sure lots to discuss. So let's get it started. Hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, bursts the speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are joined once again by the one and only Pierre McGuire. Thanks so much for joining the show. How are things? How's everything?
Everything is fantastic, Alex. I'm so jacked up to be on the show with you, talk about the Ottawa Senators. I know people are probably disappointed with the game last night in South Florida, but I think the glass is more half full than half empty, and we'll get into it as we go along here.
I guess let's just start with that. Like, looking at the game last night, Allmark struggled, the PK struggled. I thought at 5-on-5 they were pretty decent. I don't think Florida's a really good hockey team, so you're going to get pushed. But what's maybe the glass half full parts that you've seen, throughout the first two games and even last night from the Senators?
Shane Pinto, glass half full. Jake Sanderson, glass half full. The fact they're able to do some of this right now without Drake Batherson in the lineup, without Tyler Kleven in the lineup, I think once those guys get back in, I think you'll see Timmy Stützle more in rhythm. I don't think Timmy's there right now. And you could see it last night. It leads to the Samoskevich goal. He's coming down the wing. He's got to hit the net there. He goes high and wide. Puck comes all the way down the other way, and then boom, it's in the net. Can't be doing that. Timmy's too good a player to be doing that. So that part of it, the come from behind win in Tampa, I appreciated that on this trip. So there's good parts and there are bad parts. But you touched on something that's really important, and it's got to be driving Travis Green and Daniel Alfredson in particular nuts. They've been shorthanded 8 times this year. They've given up 5 power play goals against. That's unacceptable. They're the worst team in the league penalty killing right now. That can't happen.
No, for sure. And the one thing that you were a coach in the game, you're in front offices. I don't feel like I know the game as well as some others, but they have this PK formation that's a diamond, right? And they brought it over from last year. Last year, it wasn't the worst PK in the league like they are right now, but it was 19th, and they got taken advantage of by the Leafs in the playoffs too. I think that was the biggest maybe determining factor last season. They brought back the diamond. I thought they would change it up, and obviously it's been a tough start. I think Allmark is part of that too. I don't think it's all on the PK formation, but Kevin Bieksa on the Sportsnet broadcast said something really interesting. So just for people that don't know, the diamond formation, it's basically the idea is you keep everyone outside of the diamond, outside of the slot. So you give team the opponents really good like the puck and chances in away from the slot. That's kind of the idea, is nothing in the middle, all to the outside. The problem, as Bieksa said, and I'm sure you could probably relate to, is guys have really good shots now. And if you give really good players time and space in the NHL, they're going to burn you. And I think that's what we've seen last year, and that's what we've seen so far this year as well. I don't know if Green's going to change his tune, change the system, but I think I think it's as much about the system as it is about the execution and the players themselves.
I agree. That's well said. I did not know that Kevin Bieksa said that, but he's spot on. Here's the other thing. There's a great video clip. I don't know if you guys saw it last night of Claude Giroux pointing with his right hand to Shane Pinto saying, you got to get in the lane there. Well, Pinto doesn't read the play the same way that Giroux does. And all of a sudden there's this wide open lane for Florida to come down and just tee it high and let it fly. And so if you're having those communication problems this early in the year, that's probably a good thing, because it shows that maybe you need to communicate and practice it a little bit more. And so you can identify the problem pretty quick. The other part is you got to have guy, if you're going to play that diamond system that you're talking about, your goalie's got to make the initial save. He's got to have really good rebound control. But the biggest thing is if there isn't good rebound control, you got to be able to clear the crease. Easy for me to say. And you know what? They're not doing a very good job of that, Ottawa, right now. They are not clearing the crease very well at all.
No, and the thing, it's interesting that you mentioned the Giroux and Pinto kind of banter or communication. The thing with the diamond is that you're basically always in a zone. Like if you're the right defenseman, you're in the right side. Like you're not just being as aggressive, right? It's you basically have to be making reads all the time. And hockey's a game of reads, but even more so on the PK.
Yep.
And there's a couple moments like the Giroux Pinto play where they get lost. They're like, oh, am I in the right place or not? Right. And I think what why I would not have a diamond formation is if you just have like a normal one, if you're the forward, you're just like, I'm hunting the puck. I'm just going to where the puck is, where the guy is, and I'm not making reads because there's that split second moment where you don't know what to do, and that's when you get burned by Connor McDavid or Sam Bennett or whoever, right? So that's the one thing, and maybe the communication gets better, as you said, like glass half full, and by the end of the year, everyone knows where to go, and it looks great. So maybe that's the case, but not a good start, that's for sure.
No, and Justin Peters is a friend of mine and somebody that I really respect a lot as a coach. He's a goalie coach. Obviously, got called up from Belleville to be in Ottawa, and Justin going to have some work to do with Linus Ullmark. There's some fundamental stuff that has to happen there. He's got to be more anchored in the net. He's got to be way less movement with his upper body. He's moving a lot. And if you watch Florida last night, they clearly saw something on tape because they were shooting a lot high glove and they were beating them a lot high glove. So there's another video breakdown there. I'm saying Justin's going to have to get to work on this. And I think he'll be able to do it. Like I said, I've known Justin a long time. I think he's a fantastic coach. But Linus is going to have to keep his ears open and his eyes open and going to want to have to work with the goaltending coach.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of pedigree there. He won a Vezina. I think last year he had that run in December. I forget what it was, but it was like 7-0-1. He had like a 150 goals against, 930 save. He looked like a Vezina Trophy caliber goaltender. And then he had games like I remember early in the season against November against Philadelphia where Matvei Michkov scores a goal just from basically behind the net in overtime the whole game. Ullmark allowed a couple bad goals. Like he went up and down last year, even though his numbers were pretty good. And I wonder maybe he's in a bit of a rut and maybe things change, but it is a concern, right? And Ottawa, as you know, Pierre, when you're with the team, goaltending hasn't been, the strongest of suits or the most consistent of positions in Ottawa in the crease. So it is a concern. I think give it a couple more games. If they play Nashville tomorrow, maybe he plays better, gets some confidence against a worse team. Like you can see him growing into the season, but yeah, not a good start.
This is a big, by the way, I'm glad you brought up the Nashville game because it's a 1:00 start tomorrow because of Canadian Thanksgiving. But if you look at this week coming up for Ottawa, it's 4 games in 6 days. It's Nashville, it's Buffalo, it's Seattle, and it's the Islanders. And so, you look at it, there's only one road game in that whole thing, and that's at Buffalo, and that's on Wednesday night. So this is a team right now that's got a softer part of their schedule. You've got Nashville that's probably not a playoff team. You got Buffalo that right now is the worst team in the league probably. You've got Seattle who's 2-0, but they're starting a 6-game road trip. So we'll see how that plays out. And then you got the Islanders who are really struggling. Like I watched them again from last night. They're having a hard time. So this is a meaty part of the schedule. And so this might be the time where a guy like Linus can get refocused and plugged in, and maybe the team could start to galvanize around him.
For sure. And I think the way they played in both games, especially at 5-on-5, like if Ullmark plays a bit better, the PK is a bit more up to snuff. I think they would have probably got a point last night, or it would have been a much closer game, and they had that great comeback victory in Tampa. Like I think you're right about the schedule. Like 1-on-1 in Florida, it could be better, but you take that, right?
100%.
And now you go into the easier part of the schedule. I think they minimum have to go 3-1. Like they need to get 6 points out of the next 4 games. I think that's where you start, especially in Ottawa, where the starts more in November, but just overall have been slow. But I'm not too worried. I think overall the way they've played has been pretty good. I think that Tampa Bay game was really, really impressive. I don't think the Sens really played that well last season against a good team like that on the road.
I'm looking forward to getting Drake back in the lineup. I'm looking forward to getting Tyler Kleven back in the lineup. And I wonder how long it's going to be before Jordan Spence gets an opportunity to play for the team. And this is just a question for you, Alex. It's not a statement.
Sure.
You think people in Ottawa are getting a little concerned about Zetterlund in terms of whether he's a top 6 or not? Because right now I'm not seeing that from him. I know his game pretty well. I've watched him play in a lot of different situations. I just don't know if he's a top 6 in this team, especially when Batherson's back.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the numbers with Stützle, Tkachuk, and Zetterlund, they've been really good in the first couple games. They just haven't really scored outside of 1 goal, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think you propose a great question, because I think Zetterlund's a good player, but is he a 25, 30 goal guy? I don't know. I think he's a 20 goal guy, and that's great. He's not much of a playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He's speedy. He brings a lot of he's not the biggest guy, but he plays physically. He's huge. He's a very strong guy.
He's thick. He's a thick
He's
guy.
huge guy. So I think if I had to guess, I don't know Travis Green, but I've followed him for the past year covering him. If I had to guess, if Batherson, let's say, plays on Monday, I bet he slots into where Amadio was on the second line.
Yep.
And then Amadio goes to the 4th line instead of McDermott. And you have poor Cousins, and Lars Eller on the 4th line with Amadio, Batherson, Perron, and Cousins, rich one. And then you keep Zetterlund with Tkachuk and Stützle. The one thing I do like about Giroux on the 3rd line is he gives Pinto and Greg just a bit more offensive flair compared to Amadio, who's much more of a workhorse. So I can say, okay, maybe Giroux's slightly better with Tkachuk and Stützle than Zetterlund, but he provides more to the 3rd line than maybe Zetterlund does in that role. So I can see how it can shape up, but I do think Travis Green's going to mix and match. But to answer your question directly, I think he's a top 6 guy, but I don't think he's a top line right winger.
Yeah, we're going to see. I'm going to say by U.S. Thanksgiving, which is kind of a Mendoza line for a lot of things, we're going to know a lot more about Zetterlund and his ability to score or not score. The other thing, too, is I got to believe Sebrango comes out when Kleven comes back.
Yeah.
And then the other one is at some point you got to get Jordan Spence in the lineup. And the one thing I can say about him, and his agent's Peter McTavish, and I talked to Peter a lot about Jordan when he was in L.A., and I said, the one thing that stands out about him, he's not overly large, but he can move the puck. He's a really good puck mover. So you wonder at some point on the right side, and I've talked to you about this before on and off the air, I wonder just if that's not a position they're going to try to make better as they go along here. And I don't want to take shots at young kids because I got a young kid playing pro hockey too, so I know how hard it is. Carter Yakimchuk last night, they go in and they lose their game. They were down 4-0 in Lehigh Valley. They ended up coming back and losing 5-2. But Carter Yakimchuk was -3 last night. So for all those people say, oh yeah, just put him in the NHL. Just overripe rather than underdeveloped for him. Take your time. Take your time.
I think Yakimchuk is a guy that if maybe those dashes turn to pluses, that by the end of the year, if he starts playing well in Belleville, I do think he could find himself on the Senators, especially down the stretch or maybe in the playoffs.
Yep.
But I don't think that's anytime soon. I think
we agree. We agree on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think the Spence part, Nicholas Manpalo, credit to him. He's made himself an NHLer. He's big, works his butt off. But his play on the puck is just not up to snuff, especially with Sebrango, who's a young kid, played his 4th NHL game. I think Jordan Spence should be in the lineup. If you look at the numbers, they've been caved in the first 2 games of the season, while Sanderson, Zub, and Shabbat Jensen haven't. They played, I think, fairly well. especially in Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
So I think it's time for Jordan Spence just to add a little bit more offense, get the puck up to the forwards, kind of connect the dots a little bit as a team. But yeah, I don't think Jordan Spence. I don't want to get too presumptuous. I don't know what his long-term fit is in Ottawa, but I do think he can be a really good player for the Ottawa Senators this season and provide something that they don't really have too much on the right side, which is a playmaker, puck mover who
yeah.
can chip in some offense.
Agreed. Everything you just said, I agree. And um, I want to see this thing be more half full and half empty. You can see
Mhm.
Shane's really starting to warm up offensively, which is really good news. Dylan Cousins scored a heck of a goal, I thought, last night. We all know what Brady's going to do. We all know what Timmy eventually is going to do. I think the standard for turnovers and in zone coverage needs to be higher, harder on the puck. Ridley Gregg doesn't lose many battles. He lost a battle yesterday that led to a goal for the Florida Panthers in his own zone. That can't be happening. So I think Trav's going to push pretty hard on these guys. But again, that's why I brought up 4 games in 6 days. There's not a lot of time for practice time. So they're going to have to figure this out with words and with tape and guys paying attention. They really are. That's what they're going to have to do.
You mentioned Tim Stützle earlier, just kind of not finding his sea legs a little bit so
Yeah.
far. I find with him, it's my concern a little bit is that he creates a lot of offense, but not a lot high danger chances. It feels very perimeter, right? He's such a smooth skater. He's so dynamic, but getting kind of into, the right places at the right times sometimes is a challenge for him. And sometimes just the shot, right? Which, as you mentioned on the Samoskevich goal, he misses it, goes back and they score, right?
Right.
How I guess just what do you think? What are the areas that you think he needs to improve upon this season to kind of take that next step?
There's a player that plays for Florida. His name's Sam Reinhart. He can't skate anything like Timmy, but he processes a game offensively unbelievably well because he can get to the inside part of the ice because he's smart and he's slippery and he's elusive and he's got escapability. Timmy should be able to do that. I'm the biggest Stützle fan because I've seen him behind the scenes. I've worked with him on a day-to-day basis. I know his passion to be great. I know his work habits are exceptional. So all this stuff's going to lead to him being a better, more consistent offensive player. One of the things I do if I were Mike King and the coaching staff in the video room in Ottawa, I'd make clips of Reinhart. And I say, try to do what this guy does. Reinhart gets to the inside as well as almost any forward in the league. It's amazing to watch him work. And that's why he's got these unbelievably gaudy offensive numbers because he can get to those areas and he does it with consistency. Timmy's got to start doing something like that. He really does.
And I think what you touched on a little bit is that he's so fast. He's such a great skater, right? That sometimes everything's going at 100, right? And sometimes just slow down, like think the game a little bit more. Like you have more time in a sense. I mean, it's hockey, it's very fast, but I think the one thing that Shane Pinto said, right, and maybe this is a good segue, but a couple of days ago is that I'm learning that I actually have a bit more time to make reads and make plays. When I came into the league, everything was so quick and I felt like I kind of had to force it a little bit. And now I'm realizing, hey, I have maybe a split second more than I thought, right? And that's, I think, why he's been scoring a couple and playing really well to start the season.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see Tim Stützle do a little bit of that and say, hey, you're going to beat guys with your speed. You're going to get to everywhere. So don't rush it. Like you're there, right? Just slow things down and shoot a little bit more. I have like that one thing is he is shooting the puck more in good spots. Sometimes he defers a little bit too much, but he is shooting the puck more, and he's mentioned that. So I think that's a good sign for Tim Stützle.
Excellent points, and I agree with those. The other thing with the team, I get they want to be tough, and I get they want to be physical, but you got to pick spots. Not every game has to be a street fight. Not every game has to be, we're going to go out there and we're going to slaughter those guys physically. This is a high-skilled team. You just look at Stützle, Cousins, Pinto, Lars Eller. Lars Eller is if he's your fourth-line center, you're deep.
You're good.
We haven't even talked about Ridley Gregg, who's a natural center iceman. Claude Giroux's a natural center. Their depth down the middle is really overwhelming. And so when you have that, you can make a lot more plays. It's to what you were just talking about, Alex. There's a little more time, there's a little more space, there's a little more ability to make plays. And so I'd like to see them make more plays, more nights, and less slaughterhouse mentality where we're going to turn this into a street fight every night. You don't have to do that. You don't have to.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's the thing with Curtis McDermott. Like, God love him. He's in the NHL. He's a fighter, mean guy, or not mean, but like hockey mean.
Yeah.
But why are you playing him against the Florida Panthers? I don't have it up in front of me, but he maybe played 5 minutes, right? And he's on your fourth
I think it was a
line.
little less, actually. Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of it was just when the game was over in the third period, right? So you're hampering yourself rather than putting in Ollie Lixell, who, sure, he isn't a big, mean fighter, but he plays tough. He plays hard-nosed hockey. He plays the right way. And it doesn't have to be him. It could be Kaliev. Like, I think they need to go back to playing guys that can really impact winning. And sure, it's good to have a fighter. You don't want Brady fighting. But at the end of the day, we're not in the playoffs. There's no real animosity between Ottawa and Florida.
No.
Just play your best players, right? Same with
The only
Powell to some
animosity
degree.
The only animosity when Matthew's playing, Matthew Tkachuk, he and Brady getting these little jealous. Yeah. But outside of that, no, there's no animosity. I love the point about the animosity factor because it's absolutely true. Now, Nashville's coming in. I'm just telling you, they're improved. Doesn't mean they're great, but they're improved. And you got to pay attention to what they do. They transition the puck really well. They've changed their coaching staff a little bit. And because of that, they bring in Luke Richardson, who's got the tie-in with Ottawa, so he knows their team really well. Andrew Burnett, who's been an assistant coach and a head coach in the league. He's still the head coach there, but their coaching staff is good. It's deep, and Nashville is improved. Doesn't mean they're going to be a playoff team because I don't think they are, but they're a much better team than they were last year.
For sure. And I think that goes to the same way for the Sens too, right? Like, I think fans, right, when you lose 6-1 to one of the best teams in the league, they have been the best team in the league for the past couple of years. It feels like the sky's falling, right? But I feel like I take away from the first two games is like, okay, some clear areas to improve that I think the PK is not going to be 37% all year. If it is, oh my God. Allmark isn't going to have an 808 save percentage or whatever, right?
No.
And you went 1-1 in Florida, like Tampa Bay and Florida. Like, to me, on the road, there's two clear areas where, okay, needs to get better. It's not going to be that bad all season. And yet you're not 0-2. Like, you played pretty good hockey for, I'd say, 65% against two really good teams. So I think the Senators are actually in a really good spot. And yeah, they could not sleep on the Nashville Predators. I think you made great points, Pierre. And at the same time, I'm actually pretty optimistic from the first two games, just because everything hasn't really gone their way, and yet they've actually been in those games for the most part. Maybe not as much last night, but if Allmark is just good, they're probably down a goal late in the third, right? And then anything can happen, and then you get a point or win in overtime, and you say, "Wow, they just beat they weren't that far off as good as Florida was." So I think the Sens are in a good place for this next week, and I think if they can go out, as I said, get 6 out of 8 points, you're going to say, "Okay, this team's really rearing into gear moving forward."
Totally agree. That's why I brought up the schedule. I think this is one of those times in the season where you look at the schedule and say, okay, we're going to start ringing up some credit at the bank, and we're going to start putting points in the bank. And I think they can do that. I really do.
I'm curious for you, just with the Pinto part, how much do you think he's going to get paid this summer? Like, and how much would you pay a guy who's in many ways playing like a second line center, but also is in a sense a third line center?
Yeah, we always felt when I was there, the chain was going to be Patrice Bergeron light. That's what we felt always. And he's starting to round into that type of a player. I'm not sure he'll ever be as gifted consistency-wise as Patrice was, because he could do it with faceoffs. He could do it on the power play in the bumper. He was an elite penalty killer. He could shut down the other team's top players and still manufacture offense. So I don't think he's ever going to be there, talking about Shane. but I do think he can push Dylan Cousins to be better. And when you do that, you create that internal battle that makes everybody else better. And I think that's the one thing that makes him very valuable in Ottawa is Cousins knows if he lets his guard down a little bit, there's a guy that can take his ice time. And that's always a very good motivator.
What I like about, if I was Steve Stais, how I would look at this situation is, okay, you have all your core locked up outside of Pinto. You have $30 million in cap space next year. You don't even have to spend to it, to have a pretty good team. You have a guy who who he is, he's well liked in the room, that he's consistent, that he's really important to the team. Like if Pinto leaves or gets traded in 2-3 years, you're going to try to be finding another Pinto. And I think because they have Stützle, Sanderson, Tkachuk on these team-friendly deals, you can maybe spend a little bit more than you'd like with a rising cap. So to me, I would, because in many ways, I think he's more important to the Senators than Dylan Cousins is. And that's not a slight on Cousins.
No,
It's just
no, it is
he
not.
plays, but he plays PK. Takes all the toughest matchups.
Yep.
In many ways, he's your second line center. And if you pay your second line center 8 times 8 or whatever the case, I think you're like, oh, he's a good player, especially with the cap rising. So if I was Steve Stais, I would, back up the Brinks truck and get it done, especially long term. If it's a short term deal, then we have a different conversation. But I would sign him long term if you can.
I think you're looking at 8 years, and I think you're probably looking anywhere between $7 and $8 million a year. That's where I think he comes in.
Yeah. And you look around the league, right? I think our heads aren't really used to the fact that Jackson Lacombe is going to make $9 million. Luke Hughes is going to make $9 million. Obviously, McDavid and Kaprizov are exceptions to the rule in very different ways. Mm-hmm. But we're going to get more accustomed to higher numbers. So the shock value might be really high, but it doesn't mean it's a bad contract. And if you have Shane Pinto from 26 to 33 on an 8-year deal, you're laughing. Like he's a good player through his prime. I don't think the contract will age poorly.
And just remember one other thing. He's an American kid who played in the U.S. National Team Development Program. And those guys are valuable when you're living and working in a Canadian market to recruit players, to make other guys feel welcome. Montreal's doing that fantastically well right now. Toronto has really started to do that really well. And I think Ottawa's well on their way to doing that very well. When you have Clevin there, obviously Jake Sanderson there, and now Shane Pinto, those guys love being in Ottawa. They do. They love Ottawa. So I think that's another part to this that doesn't get enough attention from people around the media circles anyways, where, recruitment of players, especially in Ottawa's situation, because a new rink's not there, there's got to be other things to bring guys or make guys want to come and stay in Ottawa. And I think when you have referral business like Ottawa can have with Clevin and with Sanderson, with Brady, and obviously with Shane, that helps a lot.
How much do you think it helps a guy wanting to stay when the room is pretty tight knit? Because in Ottawa, it's a pretty close group. I haven't been around other teams, so maybe I'm just kind of biased by that, but it seems like they get along and it's a close young group.
I agree, because they all grew up together. And Tommy was the first guy, Shabbat was the first guy, and then Brady, and then it just started to flow. With Timmy comes in and Jake comes in, and I spent a lot of time out in North Dakota watching Tyler and Jake play, and talking. His first year was Shane. Shane had just come out, and so you get the feel that these guys really care about one another. And don't forget, Jacob Bernard Docker was there for a little while too. And
love JBD.
And Josh, and I hope Josh is better. I was communicating with Josh Norris the other day via text and just wishing him the very best.
Yeah.
But you had all these guys that were coming up through the thing together. Batherson's another guy, think the world of Drake. So they all grew up together. There's really no interlopers. They all care about one another. So you're spot on that. And they do have a very tight room. I completely agree.
For sure. Before I let you go, Pierre, is it just maybe one thing that kind of leaves you a bit optimistic heading into this week of games for the Ottawa Senators?
Yeah, because I think their penalty killing will get better because of Travis. Travis was an elite penalty killer. Daniel was an elite penalty killer. So I think it gets better, but just because of the coaching aspect to it. And the other thing is, I think you're going to see Linus Olmark play guilty this week. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I think he knows he had a tough trip and he had a really tough game on our last night. So I think you're going to see him play a little bit guilty.
Awesome. Well, Pierre, thanks so much for dissecting the game with me. We always love your insights. We really appreciate it here on the show, and thanks so much for coming on.
I love being on with you. I love visiting with the marketplace in Ottawa. I miss it every single day. Thanks. Appreciate it, Alex.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.